Good afternoon, class. So today we'll be talking about alternative or facultative obligation. So when we say alternative obligation, class, this is one where several prestations, act, or things are due, but the performance of one of them is sufficient to extinguish the obligation. So the debtor usually has the right to choose which prestation to perform unless expressly granted to the creditor. The key characteristic for this is there is several prestations that are due. One performance satisfies the obligation. The choice belongs to the debtor unless otherwise agreed. And once chosen, the choice is final and irrevocable after communication. With regards to facultative obligation, it is one where only one prestation is due, but the debtor may substitute it with another if they wish. The substitute is not part of the obligation, but simply an option available to the debtor. Now, its key characteristic, take note, only one prestation is due. The debtor may substitute another prestation. The creditor cannot compel the substitution. If the principal prestation is lost through the fault of the debtor, the obligation is extinguished and the substitute cannot be forced. So in short, class, an alternative obligation, you can choose one among the many, while in facultative obligation, there is only one that is due and um, the debtor can change it. Let's talk about Article 1199. Now, a person alternatively bound by different positions shall completely perform one of them. The creditor cannot be compelled to receive part of one and part of the other undertaking. Class Article 1199 of the Civil Code refers to alternative obligations. This is a situation where a debtor is bound to perform one among several prestations, either acts or services. So, one among several. So, in simple terms, class, if a person owes two or more things in the alternative, they only need to fully perform one of them to satisfy the obligation. So, for example, if X is obliged to deliver either a car or a motorcycle to Y, then X can choose to deliver one, not both. Okay? And that completely fulfills the obligation. The second sentence means that the creditor, in our example Y, cannot be forced to accept part of one prestation and part of another, like half of the car and half of the motorcycle. Also, the performance must be complete and of one kind only. Now, what's the key idea behind Article 1199? So, an alternative obligation, take note, is fulfilled by the complete performance of one chosen prestation, not by mixing or dividing them. Now, let's talk about kinds of obligation according to object. Okay, so we have here simple obligation. So in simple obligation class, there is only one object or prestation. So thing to give, to do, or not to do. Example, D oblige himself to deliver a piano to C. So here, only one obligation exists. Unsa man? Deliver the piano. Next, we have compound obligation. So compound obligation, there are two or more prestations. No? This can be conjunctive or distributive. Now, when we say conjunctive class, all the prestations must be performed. No? Um, Example, D must deliver a piano and a guitar to C. So here, D must perform both to be released from the obligation. When we say distributive obligation, meaning only one or some of the prestations are due. So this type includes alternative obligation and facultative obligation. Okay. Now, again, alternative, several prestations are due, but performing one is enough to extinguish the obligation. Like, for example, D must deliver either a piano or a guitar to C. So, once D delivers one, for example, the piano, the obligation is fulfilled. In facultative class, only one prestation is due, but the debtor may substitute it with another. So, Example, B must deliver a piano to C, but may instead deliver a guitar. Now, the main obligation is the piano. The guitar is only a substitute, optional to D. So in short class, when we talk of simple obligation, there is only one thing to do or to give or not to do. Conjunctive, you have to do all. No? Alternative, you can choose one. Facultative, one is due but may substitute another. Ato pa yung diskussan no, ang meaning sa alternative obligation para mas masabtan. An alternative obligation is a type of obligation where several prestations or various prestations are due, but the debtor only needs to perform one of them to satisfy the obligation. Take note class, the choice or the right of selection, meaning kung unsa ang prestasyon nga imong i-perform, generally belongs to the debtor unless the law, the contract, or the parties agree otherwise. Sige. Another example, D borrowed from C 10,000. It was agreed that D could comply with his obligation by giving C 10,000 or a colored TV set or by painting the house of C. Now, the delivery of the 10,000 or the colored TV set or the painting of the house of C is sufficient to comply with the obligation. Performance must be complete. So C cannot be compelled to accept, for instance, 5,000 and half of the TV, thereby establishing a co-ownership between them, or 5,000 and the painting of a part of his house. So, dili na siya pwede ha. So, kinahanglan complete. Now, again, key points for this is there are several prestations, but only one needs to be performed. The choice of which one to perform usually again belongs to the debtor. Once the choice is made and communicated, the obligation becomes simple. Nga naman, kinahanglan rin niya mo-perform kung unsa ang iyang gi-choose na prestation. Take note class of Article 1199. Article 1200. The right of choice belongs to the debtor unless it has been expressly granted to the creditor. The debtor shall have no right to choose those prestations which are impossible, unlawful, or which could not have been the object of obligation. This article class explains who has the right to choose in an alternative obligation and what limitations apply to the choice. So again, the debtor, so meaning the one who owes, has the right to choose which prestation among the several alternatives to perform. However, class, if the creditor, meaning the one who is entitled to receive, is expressly granted that right, pananglitan nagsabot sila, contract or agreement, then of course the creditor can make the choice instead. Take note class that the right of choice of debtor is not absolute because again, pwede sila magsabot ni debtor o ni creditor kinsa. But also, the right of choice of the credit of the debtor is subject to limitations. And thus, ang debtor cannot choose those prestations which are impossible. So, meaning it cannot be done or delivered. Prestation which are unlawful, meaning it's against the law or public policy, and not valid objects of obligation, like it's outside commerce or not capable of appreciation, or rather appropriation. These prestations are void class. Their presence do not invalidate the obligation if it includes other undertakings otherwise free from such defects. So in other words, under Article 1200, the debtor's right of choice is not extinguished altogether, but limited to the remaining valid prestations. Then, second is the debtor has no right of choice when among the prestations whereby he is alternatively bound, only one is practicable. So in that case, there is only one, there is not only a limitation but a loss of the right of choice belonging to the debtor. Kay usa naman ang practicable. The obligation, take note, becomes simple. The right does not pass to the creditor, nor may it be exercised by anyone. So example, D is obliged to deliver either a car, illegal drugs, or a house to C. So here, D cannot choose the illegal drugs since it's unlawful. The choice must be between the car or the house, the only lawful and possible prestations. No? Another limitation is the debtor cannot choose part of one prestation and part of another prestation. So, kinahanglan complete ang iyang choice. In essence, class Article 1200 protects fairness and obligations, giving the debtor the first right to choose, but ensuring that the choice must be valid, possible, and lawful. Okay, so nata example. So sa impossible, no? S promised to deliver to B 10 sacks of rice or a pullover wristwatch or soil from Jupiter. So here, S cannot choose to deliver soil from Jupiter as it is physically impossible. With regards to unlawful, here we have S oblige himself to deliver to B a kilo of dangerous drug or a parcel of land or a 2-carat diamond ring or to kill C. So S can choose only one parcel of land, only the parcel of land or the 2-carat diamond ring because the kilo of dangerous drug and to kill C is unlawful. Next, it could have been the object of obligation. So, for example, D borrowed from C 30,000. It was agreed that D would give C his horse or 30,000 or his German piano. Now, D has two horses. A race horse worth 30,000 and a horse for Kalesa that cannot be sold for more than 5,000. So D cannot choose the horse for Kalesa as it could not have been the object of obligation. No? Next, only one prestation is practicable. So S will deliver to be his horse or his carabao or his refrigerator. The horse and the carabao were lost without the fault of S. So S has no more choice. He must deliver the refrigerator, which is the only one practicable. Okay? Article 1201. The choice shall produce no effect except the time it has been communicated. Note class that the notice of selection or choice of prestation may be communicated either in writing, verbally, impliedly, or by any unequivocal means. Now, what's the effect of notice, no? Uh, Take note, class, that again, until the notice is made and communicated, the obligation remains alternative. No? The of course, once the notice of the election has been given to the creditor, so makapili na si debtor kung unsay ihang prestation, the obligation here ceases to be alternative and becomes simple. Such choice are once properly made and communicated is irrevocable and cannot therefore be changed by either party without the consent of the other. The concurrence of the creditor to the choice made by the debtor is not required. Where the choice has been expressly given to the creditor, such choice shall likewise produce legal effects upon being communicated to the debtor. Now, the burden of proving that such communication has been made, of course, is upon him who made the choice. The law does not require any particular form regarding the giving of notice. So again, it may therefore be made orally or in writing, expressly or impliedly. Okay, let's talk about the effects of choice or selection. So, again, when the debtor or if the creditor is given the right, makes and communicates the choice, then the obligation becomes limited to what has been chosen. It is as if there was only uh, one obligation from the very beginning. So, on sa may effect, no? Effect of the choice or selection. Again, number one is the obligation becomes simple. So once the choice is made, the debtor must perform only the selected prestation. all the natural consequences like warranties, risk of loss will now relate only to that chosen thing or act. And second is the choice is irrevocable. So after the choice has been communicated to the other party, it cannot be changed. This is to protect the other party from potential loss or damage, especially if they have already made preparations or expenses in anticipation of the chosen prestation. For example, D is obliged to deliver either a car or a motorcycle to C. D chooses the car and informs C. So from that moment, the obligation is to deliver the car only. And D cannot change his mind and give the motorcycle instead. Okay, timan-ina ninyo. So, again, once the choice is made and communicated, the obligation becomes fixed to the selected prestation and the choice cannot be revoked to avoid prejudice or damage to the other party. Now, what could be the effect of delay in making a selection? Take note, class, that the delay does not mean loss of the right of choice. Okay? So even if the debtor delays in choosing which prestation to perform, it does not automatically forfeit the right to make the selection. The right to choose remains with the debtor unless again expressly granted to the creditor. However, complications may arise if a case is filed. Now, if or if the matter is brought to court before any selection is made, so ningkihan na ka before pa naka-select si debtor, the court will need to determine which prestation should be enforced. The Civil Code does not explicitly say who will make the selection in such cases. But in practice, any of the following may happen. So, the court itself makes the choice. The court orders the debtor to make the choice within a given period, or the court authorizes the creditor to choose if the debtor unjustly delays. No, timan ina. Um, Again, the delay in selection does not remove the right to choose, but if the matter goes to court, judicial intervention may occur to prevent further delay and ensure fairness between the parties. Article 1202. The debtor shall lose the right of choice when among the prestations whereby he is alternatively bound, only one is practicable. 1202 class explains when the debtor loses the right of choice in an alternative obligation. So here, the debtor loses the right of choice when out of all the prestations, he may choose from only one remains possible to perform, meaning all the others have become impossible or unlawful. In that case, there's no longer any real choice, no? So the obligation becomes simple, limited to the only practicable prestation left. Now, the right of choice disappear when only one option is left. The obligation then becomes fixed and simple, referring solely to the remaining prestation. In short, class, when all but one of the prestations become impossible, the debtor's right to choose ends. So, dili na siya pwede mo pili. The remaining practicable prestations becomes the only obligation. So, this is the effect when only one prestation is practicable. If one, if more than one is practicable, it is Article 1200 that will apply. The obligation is still alternative because the debtor has still the right to choose. But if only one is practicable, then the obligation is converted into simple one. Class Article 1202 applies only again when the debtor has the right to choose. When all of the prestations except one have become impossible or unlawful, the debtor loses his right of choice. This is because the obligation loses its alternative character. It now becomes a simple obligation. Example: Brian is obliged to give Anne either earrings or a diamond ring or a bracelet. The earrings and diamond ring are lost by a fortuitous event before a choice can be made. Brian can deliver only the bracelet because the obligation has become a simple one. If later the bracelet is also destroyed by a fortuitous event, the obligation is extinguished and Brian would not be liable in any way. That is again glass if Brian has no fault on this case. No? Article 12003. If through the Creditors Act the debtor cannot make a choice according to the terms of the obligation, the latter may rescind the contract with damages. So, unsay result sa rescission class, the return the things which were the subject of the obligation and of course the price. Please observe that the contract is not automatically rescinded. The law says that the debtor may rescind. So implying that he may allow it to remain in force insofar as the possible choice or choices are involved. Example, A agreed to paint either this residential house or commercial building of B at 100,000. B, however, sold his commercial building. The alternative of painting the building has become impossible because of the change in ownership. A now has the option to paint the residential house or rescind the contract with damages if he suffered any. Okay? Take note of that, class. Let's move on to Article 1204. Okay, so um the creditor shall have a right to indemnify to indemnity for damages when through the fault of the debtor all the things which are alternatively the object of the obligation have been lost or the compliance of the obligation has become impossible. The indemnity shall be fixed, taking as a basis the value of the last thing which disappeared or that of the service which last became impossible. Damages other than the value of the thing of the last thing or service may also be awarded. So, class, if the impossibility is caused by the fault of the debtor, the law is clear. The creditor is entitled to indemnity for damages. When only one or some of the prestation has been lost or became impossible, the creditor cannot claim indemnity for damages because the debtor who has the right to choose may still perform any of the remaining alternative prestation. Now, what is the basis of indemnity? So, the indemnity shall be fixed, taking as a basis ang value of the last thing which disappeared. So, meaning referring to the obligation to give or that of the service which last became impossible. It refers to the obligation to do. In case of disagreement, class, it is incumbent upon the creditor to prove such value or which thing last disappeared or which service last impossible. Other damages also may be awarded, no? Depende sa situation. Article 1205. 1205 class refers to a case when the right of choice belongs to the creditor. So kung naay agreement. In alternative obligations, the right of choice as a rule belong to the debtor. However, a debtor may expressly give the right of choice to the creditor. In such case, the provisions with respect to debtor are laid down in the preceding article. So before the creditor makes the selection, the debtor cannot incur in delay. The creditor can make a choice in case wherein when the thing is lost through a fortuitous event, when a thing is lost through debtor's fault, when all the things are lost through debtor's fault, and when all the things are lost through a fortuitous event. Note, class ha, that this article is also applicable to a personal obligation. The responsibility of the debtor for damages depends upon whether the cause which has rendered the obligation impossible was due to his fault or not. Okay? Take note of that. Article 1206. This refers to a facultative obligation. So, in facultative obligation, the debtor can give another prestation even if there is only one prestation agreed upon. The second paragraph provides that it is logical that the substitute is the new object of the prestation which the creditor expects to obtain. Sige. Let's talk about the meaning. So, a facultative obligation is where only one prestation has been agreed upon, but the obligor or the debtor may render another in substitution. So, example, I will give you my piano, but I may give you my LCD TV as a substitute. So, in this obligation, only the piano is due. Hence, its loss through my fault will make me liable. Next, I will mortgage my land to secure my debt, which shall be payable within 90 days upon my failure to pay of my debt within 30 days. So here, I may mortgage my land in substitution of the obligation to make payment within 30 days. Okay, let's distinguish alternative or facultative obligations. Although a while ago na discuss na nato, but uh, let's talk about its basis. As to contents of obligation, so in facultative, only one thing is principally due, but a substitute upon the choice of the debtor may be delivered in payment of the obligation. In alternative obligation, there are various things due, but the complete performance of one of them is sufficient for the payment of the obligation. As to nullity, in facultative, if the principal obligation is void, the creditor cannot compel delivery of the substitute. In alternative, if one of the prestation is void, the others which are without vices preserve the validity of the obligation. As to choice, take note that in facultative, the right to choice, that is whether to make a substitution or not, pertains to the debtor alone. The creditor is never given this right. But in alternative obligation, the right of choice may be given either to the debtor or creditor kung magsabot sala. As to the effect of loss in facultative, if there is impossibility, like physical or legal, to deliver the principal thing or prestation, the obligation is extinguished. While in alternative obligation, if the various prestations are impossible performance except one, this one must deliver to settle the obligation. If all prestations are impossible performance, the obligation is extinguished. Now, what is the effect of loss? No? So, kung mawala ang butang. Before substitution, um, if the principal thing is lost through a fortuitous event, the obligation is extinguished. Otherwise, the debtor is liable for damages. The loss of the thing intended as a substitute with or without the fault of the debtor does not render him liable. The reason is that the thing intended as a substitute is not due. The effect of loss is merely to extinguish the facultative character of the obligation. Kung ang substitution o kung ang paggawa sa butang is after substitution, meaning na substitute na no, before nawala. If the principal thing is lost, the debtor is not liable whatever may be the cause of the loss because it is no longer due. If the substitute is lost, the liability of the debtor depends upon whether or not the loss is due to his fault. So, kung siya nakasala. Note class, that once the substitution is made, again, the obligation is converted into a simple one to deliver or perform the substituted thing or prestation. The substitution becomes effective from the time it has been communicated. Okay. Morning, when substitution is effective, from the moment the debtor communicates with creditor that he chose to perform the substitute prestation with respect to alternative obligation. The obligation being simple and any delay, neglect, or bad faith in its performance will be incurred upon the debtor. Okay? You take note of that, class. Thank you.